Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing today?
Doing great, Eric. It's November 1st. It looks beautiful outside. Halloween was behind us, but it was getting the kids out again and so on. So it's life is good. Happy November.
Yeah, it's nice to see things returning to normal. We've had the start of some cold weather, so we're heading into the end of fall. The trees still have leaves on them here in New England, but they're turned colors and they're starting to fall.
Now, and we still haven't even had a frost up here, which is crazy. Normally,
Yeah,
normally we're putting pots away and stuff like that because flowers are wilted. And I'm looking at some brilliant red begonias on my deck right now. So
yeah, normally we've had our first frost. That hasn't happened yet. We're expecting it soon, but in the meantime, we're still mowing lawns. Yeah. So this week, some interesting news came out of the tech sector. Facebook has announced that their new corporate name is Meta, and that's short for metaverse. And this is Mark Zuckerberg's pet project, basically, is creating this metaverse. Now, he's really keen on it, but to be perfectly honest, most other people aren't so keen on it. In a demo video, Zuckerberg showcased that the metaverse would be a virtual reality world where everybody has an avatar and you're walking along in this world, meeting with people, quote unquote, face to face, but you're in your office, they're in theirs, and you're looking at each other's avatars. Now, this was tried a number of years ago without the virtual reality aspect of it with a product called Second Life, and there was a lot of hoopla around it, and it failed miserably because people don't want to be looking at avatars, they want to be looking at other people. So that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, is utilizing the digital tools to interact with other people and how you can do it most effectively, what tools work, what tools you have to be careful of, and what's the etiquette when you put a digital screen between you and the person you're connecting with. So, Chip, I know you changed a lot of what you do when COVID hit, moving things over to Zoom. So, how has that gone for you using Zoom rather than in person presentations?
well, I mean, at the beginning, first of all, when COVID hit, I thought being a speaker, trainer, consultant, uh, facilitator for meetings and so on and so forth that I was going to be taking a long vacation because I did not even realize the power of Zoom. But how within a week, I Zoomed with my family for the holidays, and we had a couple of Chamber of Commerce things going on and so on. So all of a sudden, I realized really what the silver linings were in the Zoom cloud, which is basically unlimited marketplace because you can go anywhere now that you got the whole world there. Logistics, you don't have to drive and travel and so on and so forth. The way that Zoom is set up with breakout rooms and so on and so forth, you can actually focus a whole lot more with people. So it did open up a whole new world. However, and you've been to a lot of these West Hartford Chamber networking meetings and things like that too. You get used to seeing the same faces there every single week, and it's fun networking with people beforehand because you see everybody instead of a couple of people. But then again, everything is still digital. Um, getting as times got better, getting out, doing more meetings, and so on and so forth. That's been fantastic getting back together and moving ahead. I mean, we're going to be in a hybrid world with a lot of people wanting to get out and do face to face things again. A lot of people who will never do it again because they're paranoid. And most people are going to be in the middle and they're going to want a mix of things for whatever reasons, such as logistics or things like that. So, I mean, it's definitely things that we have to adjust to. I think what a lot of people like myself and probably you too miss the most of is really the personal interactions and the relationships. Because the first time I saw you was about a month ago at a networking meeting since before this happened, and it was great to see you. And it's been like that with a lot of people out there too. And I think what's been lost in this really is how do you keep connecting with people both ways, because you got to take some of the things that we were doing face to face and bring that into the digital world instead of just dealing with texts and messaging and reading stuff on Facebook and all the other things and whatever. So um, it's interesting what he's coming up with here, but as far as getting everything done just in a digital world, I have my reservations about that too. I mean, I'm thinking that the best thing that's coming out of this is that we're learning how to do things in both worlds, which is what we need to do. I mean, that's what adaptation is all about. And the COVID situation, which brought us into the digital world, did not eliminate the need for getting together face to face and still conducting business that way too.
No, it certainly did not eliminate that. And I know most of the folks I know are excited about getting back in touch with people face to face and seeing folks. But over the course of the last year and a half, almost 2 years, people have had to learn to use digital tools to supplement the Zoom meeting, the phone call, to try to get as much connection as possible. And a lot of that has happened over social media. Now, there's a lot of different social media sites. And in terms of really connecting with folks, there's pretty much 5 sites that have stood up above the rest. And those are Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. None of them are perfect, obviously, but these are the ones that people have found they're able to make the best connections through. Now, there's a whole lot of other social media sites. A lot of them claim to be business sites, things like Shaper, Bumble Business. These work more like, and I'm blanking on the dating site, at Tinder, where if you want to meet with somebody, you swipe right, and if they swipe right, it'll make the connection. The problem with a lot of these other social media sites is there is a very high percentage of spam, of con artists, you know, so it's been very difficult to use these to make real connections. The 5 that I mentioned, these have a track record already. People know them, people have been on them for a while. So it's been easier to use those. Now, we've seen those change over time as well. And it's become more difficult for businesses to use them, especially Facebook, because Facebook has been going, well, people are on our site for so long, we want to monetize them, which, let's be fair, Facebook is a business. Of course, they want to monetize it. But they've cut down on personal connectivity in favor of forcing people to try to take ads to promote products, to boost posts to get people to see them. And these don't work as well as organically creating connections. So what I really want to talk about with all of this is that ability to create a connection. And it's not about posting. It's not about sitting in a Zoom room and just watching what's going on. It's about interacting and how you interact on digital platforms, on things like Zoom, and how you can encourage people to interact with you, because that's what creates connections, even in the digital realm.
Yeah, it's easier now than any time to connect with people after that. Obviously, before when we just had physical networking meetings, I mean, you and I both train people in this, and we say, what you need to do to develop relationships is start meeting with each other afterwards, so, which means setting up an appointment, getting a place to go and meeting and so on. Now, when we're using Zoom, you have your chat room where you can put all your digital information in there, and you have the ability to just reach out and set these things up with people. So there's a whole lot more of one-on-ones going on right now because of Zoom. But what happens is, I'm sure the ball's getting dropped a whole lot more than it would be in personal relationships too, because it's great to get to know people, but taking it to a new level is difficult to do unless you have really an approach to that too. Obviously, in face to face, you have to follow up with people. But I read an article, had printed it out, that had some other tips in there. The first tip, it says 6 practical ways to connect with humans in a post COVID-19 world. And the first tip was be extra. And basically what it talks about is increasing the level of human that we're being in any given moment, because everything else around us is starting to feel inhuman and digital and a little bit scary. And so basically it's coming up with more real life things that you can work with each other on. It talks really about, so you got to put together an approach to use this a lot more, so you're going to keep yourself in the game there. But then it talks about the in-between, and the in-between time, in face-to-face is what do you do between now and the next time and so on. But the in-between time, as far as digital communications, is really, really huge too. I mean, basically, just because you're going digital most of the time doesn't mean that you can't pick up a phone and call somebody, prepare more questions and so on and so forth. Really just think through the ways that you're doing that so you can keep the conversation going. Look for a reason to do that kind of stuff. There's more of them there, but I think you get the drift that coming up with a strategy for handling things digitally is just as important as it is when you're handling just personal relationships.
Absolutely. And, part of that strategy is actually stepping away from the fact that we're using digital and think about how you would react face to face. So, because a lot of the same rules and etiquette that we use in person work very well on digital, but people don't do them. They forget because there's that impersonal computer sitting between you. So things like, we've talked about this a lot. When you go to a networking meeting, you're not there to sell. It's about making connections and meeting people. Well, on LinkedIn, it's the same thing. When you're sending out a connection request, you should not be trying to sell this person. You want to connect with them. You want to get to know them. If they're interested, once you've built up that relationship, great. But it's not for sending out spam emails going, oh, you look like you should be, you would be interested in our lead generation service. No, I have no interest in your lead generation service. I don't even know who you are. We talk about it a lot in person. People do business with people they like, know, and trust. You don't know somebody that's just sending you a message on LinkedIn. So the odds are against your wanting to do business with them until you get to know them. So you don't just send out, sales pitches on social media. By the same token, when you're scrolling through your social media feed, people, especially on Facebook, are posting pictures of their grandkids, are posting pictures of parties that they're going to or things they're doing. And the vast majority of people, they'll either scroll past, they'll look at it and keep scrolling, or maybe they'll hit like. But think about it. If you were face to face with this person and they pulled out a picture of their grandkids or they showed you something they were doing, you would comment on it. You would say something. So don't just hit like, don't just scroll past it. Make a comment the same way you would in person. Start conversations in these comment feeds. It turns out that people are a lot more likely to respond to you when you're commenting on something than if you just post something of your own. So you have to go out of your way to start these conversations because, again, face to face, it's natural. But when you're looking at something online and there's no person, right in front of you, we tend to switch that part off, and that's keeping people from making connections, is the fact that you're not treating the person on the other end of this connection as though they were in the room with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's so tough to do. I mean, you mentioned the 5 different social media sites, the top 5, and the only one that I really use a lot is Facebook. I mean, I use LinkedIn a bit when people want to link with me, and sometimes I follow stuff on there. I'm not even a member of Twitter. I think I have an ancient Instagram account, and I've never been on Pinterest. But it's so important, as you said. I mean, there have been some very, very nice Facebook conversations, both obviously with me being a grandpa and stuff like that. It's wonderful seeing family things happen, especially now that things are loosening up. I mean, people are starting to get married again, and there's other things that are going on. And as you said, it's just so wonderful to celebrate life there by commenting on there. Obviously, you can go on and like things. I like to love stuff a lot because that shows a little bit more emotion. Or I like to do crazy stuff like wows. If there's no wows up there, sometimes I'll just do that too, just to draw more attention to my crazy self as far as that goes. But yeah, it's there's so much that you can do with that, and really just continuing to be person instead of just somebody online is so important. One of my favorite tips of these 6 that we're talking about, and this talks about business and people that you want to deal with, and this is the way that it is in true life too, but you need to do this online also. It's creating the culture that you crave. Basically, we've adapted a lot with things, and culture and community, they're all of our choices. And we've read and been bombarded with so much about different cultures, contrasting and getting together and so on and so forth. It's really, really important to create that, to kind of portray that in who you are, both for your organization, workplace, school, your home, and whatever. But, the big question is, you talked about people dealing with people they know, like, and trust. And really what you're doing with that is you're creating a culture with these people who you can get along with in these areas, and hopefully help some of these people who are maybe more quiet, especially in the digital age, come out of their shell a little bit more by being involved with this. I would imagine that working digitally is easier for some folks, a lot easier than the face-to-face contact. And I'm sure that's helped a lot of people, and it's hurt some too.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you tend to be more introverted, it's a lot easier for you to use digital than it is to, get into the middle of a meeting. But those digital tools also, because they're so easy, they can cause problems as well. And, I was just, as I was just talking about making those connections, it's important to make those connections one-on-one. And there are digital tools that make that even easier. One of my favorite things is having Facebook tell me every morning whose birthday it is, because I've always been terrible at remembering people's birthday. I have forgotten my own birthday. So having Facebook tell me, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday today, that's great. That means, okay, that remind me. That way I'll send them a message. I'll make a phone call, whatever it is, but this way I'm reaching out. But because it's digital doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it one-on-one. This is a personal pet peeve, but when somebody sends out a happy holidays message and they send it to a massive number of people on a text or on Facebook Messenger or something like that, and then everybody who responds to that message gets sent to the entire group. So if you've said happy holidays to 20 people and 20 people are saying it back, that's a ridiculous number of messages actually coming to the phone. And if, I've had it where I'm at work and the phone is buzzing, every 30 seconds or so with another message, and I have to leave the group because it's just too much of an interference. You have to take these things into consideration. Yes, it's easy to reach a large group, but it's not, and it's convenient, but it's not always the best way to make connections with people. And in fact, there's a lot of folks out there that they get these bulk messages and they go, oh, you couldn't be bothered to actually reach out to people. You're just blasting it. And it can backfire.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have not been part of a lot of big ones as far as non-family stuff or close people that I know type things. But even those, when you have everybody commenting on this little thing, I just turn off the conversation. If it's coming through Facebook and there's a whole bunch of people there, I automatically just leave it. And I don't care who's in there because I don't need to hear that stuff, and I don't need to be going to Facebook every 5 minutes to see what's going on with that. So, yeah, I totally hear you on that. It's really important to just focus on individual people. I mean, relationships are individuals. If you have some wonderful news, great. Share with the people you know and love and your friends that you know and love. But, leave everybody else on LinkedIn and everything else out of it because they really don't care. It's not that they don't care. They'll just say, oh, that's nice, but I just wasted a couple minutes going through these things.
Right. I mean, if you want to say happy holidays, for example, to a large group of people, you can just post that on your Facebook feed, post it on your LinkedIn feed, and everybody you're connected in, it'll show up in their feed. That's fine because you're not interfering with their day with buzzers going off on their phones, constantly.
Yeah, and if they want to post back, that's great. Sometimes
Exactly.
It's a great way to rekindle relationships, saying, wow, it's great to hear from you. How's life? How's things going? So,
and that's another thing that's great about digital media is that if you're connected to somebody, even if you haven't spoken to them in a long time, if they're posting something big that's happening in their life, that's a great reason to reconnect with them. Post a comment saying, hey, that's fantastic. It's been too long since we've spoken. Let's get together, or let's schedule a phone call or a Zoom call. It's a simple.
Yeah, I've done that a lot, especially with LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is very good about posting work anniversaries, even though I get 4 or 5 a year about me, which I have don't know anything about. But people reach out to me.
Yes.
But you get a list of people that show up. I mean, you get an email every week saying, so-and-so celebrating this and whatever. And oftentimes I'll just open that up just to see who's there. And if I see somebody that I haven't talked to for a long time, I said, oh yeah, that's right. I've known this person for years and I totally forgot. That's a great way to rekindle things. And that's one of the nice things about the digital world is because everything's in a database, so they know everything.
Right. So use use that data, use that information to reconnect and rebuild relationships. Talk about, I have one person that's worked with me for years. We don't see each other much because, we're not located geographically close to each other, but we'll talk a couple of times a year. We'll make the point of doing that. And of course, what always comes up is, my oldest son is now on his own. He's moved out. And, if I bring that up, he remembers when I brought my son to the office at 2 years old. He was, didn't want to be there, crying. And the joke that was made over and over again is, let him cry. He's just saying what the rest of us are thinking. But because we do keep in touch, again, not as often as we'd like, but we see what's going on in each other's lives on social media. We comment on each other. We have that relationship continuing to move forward. So even when you're not seeing somebody, it's a lot easier to keep a relationship going using the information they're posting on Facebook or LinkedIn than it was if you would just send a letter, once a year updating everybody. I don't, lots of people used to do this. The holidays would roll around, send out that annual letter to, bringing people up to date. This is a lot more interactive, but you still have to make the effort to be in that relationship and be present.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you folks out there just think about what you've done over the last year and a half, 2 years, as far as connecting with people this way. I mean, I originally am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I moved out here when I was 9 years old, so I have lots of close cousins out there. Having been on Facebook with them before and through this whole thing, it's just been amazing through all the years. But I also have a lot of business friends that I made over the years who have moved, relocated, and so on, and stayed in connection with them too, just by being Facebook friends or LinkedIn connections and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it is really, really powerful, and it's not a bad idea from time to time for you to go through who you know there and maybe reach out to somebody. And the same thing in real life, because we all need that more than ever. I mean, a personal phone call or a heartfelt card or message just means so much these days, especially when we all need it so much.
Exactly. And one of the unique things that came out of all of this is that the reverse has happened. I have met people through Zoom meetings, through social media, that I am now very close friends with them. And yet I have never seen them in person. And now that we can, we're starting to, oh, yes, finally, I'll be at such and such a place. Let's make that connection. Think about the people you've met at Zoom meetings that you haven't met in person yet. Make a plan to go for coffee or grab a drink or meet for dinner, something. Take that relationship offline and see people in person again. Even if you're a little nervous, you can still wear a mask and stay social distanced if you're really afraid of all of this. But there's nothing like adding that in-person, aspect to somebody that you've been talking to for a year and a half and never actually had the opportunity to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been one of the neatest things about the last couple of months, because a lot of these people who I've known only through Zoom, I've finally gotten to meet. And it's just wonderful getting together with these people.
Exactly. And all of this is about building those relationships online, offline. Again, as more and more tools come about to create digital relationships, and let's face it, those tools are going to keep coming. There's always going to be more things that we can do online. It's important to remember that the same steps you take to create a relationship in person, you should be taking online. Make that effort to actually connect. So we're just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Well, my number 6 clue here talks about humans are an incredibly adaptable species. We have survived plagues, pandemics before. Social worlds have been updated an infinite number of times, and through the discovery of fire, the wheel, the printing press, the telegraph, the telephone, the internet, and now we've been very, very adaptable. And basically, the secret of humans is being able to adapt to all these changes. And it talks about fundamental human connection principles. And this can be done physically, digitally, however you want to do it. But it talks about humans connect through curiosity, through generosity, through authenticity, through vulnerability. Sometimes it's hard, but we still are wonderful as a species and wonderful as people. So whatever way that you can do it, just go out and celebrate each other and connect.
I love that. I love that. I really do. I think the big takeaway for me is to remember that even though there's a digital aspect, even though you're looking at Facebook or Zoom or whatever the tool is, your goal is that there's a person at the other end of this that you're trying to connect to. And we have to remember that it's a person, and you have to treat that person online just as well as you would treat them offline. And I think as long as people remember that they're connecting with other people, not just online systems, those connections and those relationships will prosper and grow. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.